Good morning. Good morning. I'm sounding a little stuffy today. Um, as some of you know, I went on a trip last week and came home with COVID. But it's okay. I This is not as serious as it has been for many others. I'm also sporting a new cut. Yeah, yeah. I think the hairdresser went a little too far though. I said I wanted to get it up off my neck, and I think she meant just get it all up. So, anyways, it'll grow back. Good morning, Barb and Pam. Good morning. She wants to know how my sister's doing and how I'm feeling. I'm feeling better. My sister had a massive heart attack yesterday. It's pretty serious. Um, At this point, they've done everything they can. At this point, we're at a wait and see until Monday. They're keeping her unconscious to allow her body to rest, and they're going to bring her back conscious on Monday, and then we'll get some more test results. So until then, lots of prayers, lots of well wishes. Um, Everybody, just keep a good, healthy vibe in the universe. Okay, so what are we doing today? We're going to talk about the rules of embroidery. Um, and this is more, thank you. This is more regarding uh, the graphics and what the graphics need to be to get the embroidery you want. And I'm going to um, be sneezing here in a little bit. Anyways, it's a good thing it's not contagious over the internet. We'd all be in trouble. Okay. The other thing that goes with that is just um, your basic embroidery rules. What needs to be digitized to have a good stitch out? I know I'm starting to ramble here because my head is all foggy. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hold on just a second, and badam. Okay, this is my embroidery digitizing software. And if you look at this screen, good morning. If you look at this screen, you'll see that there's a piece of artwork there. And this artwork came to me with the request to be done on a hat. Now, when people send graphics, when they create graphics, the graphics people don't generally understand what needs to happen for embroidery. They're creating a massively beautiful graphic to meet the customer's expectations. I'm going to go full screen on our graphic here. Now, if we look at this graphic, what I want you to see is that this graphic, and I don't know if you can, I should have put a dot on my cursor here. Can you see the size of this graphic way up here? That's almost 12 inches from top to bottom. 12 inches. This graphic is 12 by almost 9 inches across. How many people know how much room you have on the front of a hat to stitch a design file? How much space is available on the front of a hat to stitch a design file? Do you have 12 inches? Maybe 6. That's exactly right. You have 2.25 inches. All right, here, just a little bit more. 2.25 inches. Going back to our graphic, this graphic is 12 inches. Hold on, I got another one here for you. This graphic is 2.25 inches. Not much. Maybe. Pam, you're right. Sometimes you can get a 3 by 3 on there. Depends on the hat. Okay, so you can see there's a big difference between the graphic that came across and the graphic size that we have to use. The first thing you want to remember is you want your graphics person, whoever's creating your graphics, you want your graphics person to create the graphic at actual size, not at 12 inches. If you're going to put it on a jacket back, 12 inches is perfect. But if you want it on the front of a hat, you need to have them create at 2.25 inches. Real quick here, just wanted a quick shout out to Cindy. Cindy, I'm wearing your shirt. Cindy gave me this shirt at Applique Getaway. Isn't she terrific? I have Cindy's shirt all over me. All right. So back to our graphic. So you want them to create the graphic at the final size it's going to be seen at. Now, I'm going to get rid of this first big graphic because we're not going to work with the 12-inch graphic, right? We're going to work with the little bitty teeny tiny one. And I say teeny tiny because by comparison, it is teeny tiny. And I'm going to increase it to 200% so you can see more. Here, maybe even 400%. That's better. Now, remember, we're going to be stitching at 2.25 inches. But embroidery has dimension. Thread has dimension. Thread is round. It is not flat. It is not like ink where you can lay a microscopic dot of ink at any size you want. Thread is always going to be the same size. Well, can't say that. If you're using 60 weight thread, it's going to be a little thinner. If you're using 40 weight thread, it's a little fatter. And then 30 weight thread, even more so. So anyways, we're going to work with our standard 40 weight thread. All right, going back to our graphic. Now, we have all of these lines here. Those lines, because of their size, we're going to have to decide if we're going to use a running stitch, a triple running stitch, or if we can use a satin stitch. Now I'm going to change the size of that satin. Oh, sorry, got to get out of the measurement here. Okay, so if we take all of these stitches and we put them over our narrowest stitch line, can anybody look and tell me what stitch you're going to be working with for those lines? Are you going to be working with the single run stitch, the triple run stitch, or the satin stitch? Yikes, lots for a cap. Cindy's saying that it's a lot for a cap. It is a lot for a cap. And that's what today's show is about, is to try to convey to everybody what we get when we get the graphics. And Deanna's is right. It would be the triple run stitch. The reason we're using the triple run stitch is because it is thicker than the single run. So we're going to get rid of that. But it's far narrower than the satin. Now I want to go back to the satin for a moment. This satin stitch is 1.5 millimeters wide. When you're doing a satin in a design, when you're going to do just a simple satin column in a design, you want it to be at least 1.5 millimeters. And the reason being is because you need room for two needle punctures, but that feather's way down at the bottom. We'll get to that in just a moment, Cindy. Excuse me, so sorry. Because your 7511 needle is 0.75 millimeters wide. And for every single stitch, you have a penetration. You have two penetrations. On a satin, you have the left penetration, and then it jumps over to make the right penetration. And you need to have a span of fabric for the satin to create the satin. So you need at least 1.5 millimeters in a satin column. Do we have any room for a 1.5? Yes, we do. We can use a 1.5 here on the outline of the feathers, but we're not going to be able to use it on this red border because the border is very narrow. Let's see. What else have we got here? We can use a satin over here, but we're not going to be able to use a satin around the teeth. Do you see how that works? So your satin, you want to use at least 1.5 millimeters to create a satin stitch. Now, on the other side of that, you have a limitation as to how wide you can go. Your machine is going to force a trim and jump at a 12 millimeter satin. Now, just right here, a 12 millimeter satin is going to be your widest satin, but it's too wide for a design file. We use a 12 millimeter satin when we're doing foam, when we're doing puff embroidery. Our standard satin, let me get back here, is between 7 and 8 millimeters. And even then, most softwares have a setting that will auto split satin. And we need to, if we want to have a smooth satin, we need to turn that off. So that's our maximum satin. While we're here, I'm going to take this back down to 1.5 millimeters. And we have our triple run stitch on our 1.5 millimeter. Anything over that 8 millimeters, oops, sorry, let me go back here again. Anything over the 8 millimeters should be a fill stitch, a tatami stitch. Of course, you can use patterns and you can use random stitches, you can use textures, but anything over the 7.5, 8 millimeters should be a tatami stitch. Okay, so those are some of our basics. Now, in this design file, we can have a satin stitch going around our feathers. in a triple run stitch going down the center of our feather. But this design file has all kinds of distressed elements. Do you see these little dots and specks? What do you want to do with those? Are you, as a machine operator, are you going to want each and every one of these dots and specks? Now remember, some of these are really small. For example, this one here that I just digitized is only 1.24 millimeters. Can we stitch a decent stitch at 1.2 millimeters? Keep in mind that when you tie in an area, you need 3 stitches. When you tie out, you need 3 stitches. Plus, you have to have that span to create the stitch. So, in my opinion, the answer is no. The distressed elements of this artwork is not going to get digitized. It's just not going to work. Satin stitch for the outlines of the feather. Yep, Cindy, that's exactly right. Cindy is saying that we need to use a satin stitch for the outside and a triple run for the inside. But again, no distressed. Okay. So, oh, look, we have some lettering in here. I'm going to hold on a second. Sorry. I know. At least you don't have to watch this. You got the screen. So we have this circle. We're going to make a circle. Now this is just a draft circle. It's not the size. It's just a circle. And I'm going to fill it up. This circle is 5 millimeters, 5.5 millimeters. Okay, so I'm going to change its color. And I'm going to make it an outline. And we know that that circle is 5.5 millimeters. Now, good morning, and you're fine. If you got any questions as we go along, please. In fact, everybody, if you have any questions as we go along, just ask. I'll be right here. Okay, so again, we're going to take and we're going to create a letter. Now, I could digitize this letter, but for our sample today, I just want to show you DWC. Yep. And I'm going to create a 5 millimeter letter. And the reason we have a 5 millimeter letter is, remember, our satin stitch needs to be 1.5 millimeters because we need to make a penetration in front of. Sometimes I like to see my own face on the screen. Hold on a second. Where'd the button go? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. So, as I was saying, remember, you need that. Oh, hello, Frank. Frank, I am using E4.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the version is. So to make your stitch, remember in your satin, you need to make a stitch, then it jumps over and creates another stitch. And you have to have that span. So you have your minimum letter, 5 millimeters. Here's our 5 millimeter letters. Yep. Are those going to fit in our circle? Nope. Oh, you can't see anything, can you? 5 millimeter letter. Are those going to fit in our circle? No, because remember our circle's already 5 millimeters. Now, if I shrink this down to fit in a circle, There it is. Let me change the color. Let me take the artwork away. That's your lettering. That lettering is 1.2 millimeters tall. How many of you want to stitch? Get your rulers out. Stitch 1.2 millimeters tall. So no, I don't think the lettering is going to fit in there either. Cindy's saying you have to be careful what you put that regular wide satin on, 0.7 millimeters, then a good underlay. Yeah, we'll talk about underlay. Yeah, because there are rules with underlay also when you're digitizing. And you're right, Frank. No, not going to stitch that 1.2. So at this point, what I want to convey, is that when your customers come to you or when you create graphics for embroidery, things you need to remember. Anything under a 1.5 millimeter wide line in the graphic is going to be a running stitch. If you don't like running stitches on your design file, then you need to keep in mind that you need at least 1.5 millimeter wide line. Again, excuse me. If you want to use lettering in your design file, you want to make sure that your lettering is at least 5 millimeters tall. 5 millimeters. And that's to give room for your column stitch, allows room for the gaps so that you have your openings are visible. For example, if we were to put an E up here, let's get a capital E. E's are always good for this. Where'd my E go? Suppose it'd help if I was looking at the keyboard. If we do a 5 millimeter E, oh, let's do a lowercase e too, since we're right here. And I did look at the keyboard this time. So you want to have this space here in between should be at least a millimeter. This opening should be a millimeter. This opening should be a millimeter. And you want that so that you can actually see it when it stitches out. So 5 millimeter lettering. Personally, I prefer a 7 millimeter on hats. You know, it's just all that the 7 millimeter on hats because of the social distancing. You want to be able to read it. That's the whole point of wearing a hat and advertising on a walking billboard, is so that somebody can read it without coming up and putting their nose right to the top of your hat so they can read it. Line files should be anything under 1.5 millimeters will be a running stitch. You have 1.5 millimeter for your minimum satin and 7 to 8 for your widest satin. Anything over that gets to be a tatami fill. Now, something else you need to be aware of. If you have two elements in your design that are sitting right next to each other, because of push and pull, you need to have an overlap. And you really should consider this when you're drawing your graphics. I like to have a 1 millimeter overlap so that there's no gapping when it stitches. And I'm going to throw this one in the back and bring it down just a little bit. And I don't like to have more than 3 layers in any set element. And oops. Let go. Let go. You know, along with being stuffy and sneezy and runny, I'm also a bit brain slow. So in this area where those overlaps are happening, I have a green, a blue, a green, a red, a blue. But right here, let's see if we can do something else here. But right here, you can see I have 3 overlaps. That's going to cause issues with your density. Did you leave the blue circle filled? It will. Cindy wants to know if in my Indian, if I left that blue circle filled. In the design file, I would. And it will get tight. It will get very dense. That's exactly what we're talking about with this exercise right here with the overlaps. It's going to have a stitch buildup. It's going to have stitch penetration. Remember, if you have a piece of fabric, oops, and we're going to try to do this with stitches. Okay, so we have the needle go down and the needle come up. That's 2 threads. You have the needle go down and go up and go down and go up and go down and go up and go down and go up. All of that thread is displacing the fabric. That's where the push in the fabric comes into play. That fabric's got to go someplace. Whoops. And it's going to get all bulked up in here. Your stabilizer is going to help control some of that. Your underlay is going to help control some of that. But you have to be aware that you don't want to put too many stitches in the same place, because remember, all that fabric's got to go someplace. You now have 3 layers of thread on top of fabric that was already perfect. It was never meant to be more than what it was. But we're going to go in there and we're going to jam more thread in there. And Cindy's right. Since the artwork already has a big DWC, I would just put a solid Smart Falls circle there. I would, Cindy. I would. There are things that can be done to this artwork that would make it work and still convey the message. Unfortunately, we as digitizers have another rule. We do not change the client's artwork without first consulting the client. They had a specific message that they wanted, and this is all part of that message. So I would go to the client and ask them, this is what we have. And in my world, they have to go to their customer and explain to them what's going on. In this case, the customer has decided to rework their artwork. So we're on hold with this project. And they did allow me permission to use their artwork in today's lesson plan. So going back to our files, where'd it go? Isn't it just wonderful? You get to look at a plain empty screen. There it is. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, you see all this triangular stuff in the back, not triangular. His artwork shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 of those line elements. 8 of those line elements um, that need to start out at approximately 1.5 millimeters. They won't all fit. Is that important to the message? Does it have to be part of that? In my opinion, no. In the customer's opinion, yes. So that's for them to decide. So let's see, where are we? Oh my goodness, I'm late. I'm late. I'm late. We had a lot to talk about today. Um, so, bottom line, when you have artwork created, when you have graphics created for embroidery, tell your graphics provider that lines under 1.5 millimeter will be a running stitch. Of course, they won't know what that means. You make a determination what you want in the artwork to be a running stitch. What you want to see is a satin column. Keep in mind that under 1.5 millimeters is going to be the running stitches. 1.5 up to 8 can be a satin column. Over 8 millimeters will be a tatami stitch, a fill stitch. If two fill stitches or two elements come together, remember you have to have that overlap. Keep that in mind. You don't want 3 overlaps in the same space. Lettering. Lettering should be at least 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters or taller. If you want your letters to be satin, keep in mind that that column, no more than 7.5 to 8 millimeters. Your As a digitizer, you're going to understand which underlays and which stitch densities are going to work best. But for your graphics people, keep in mind what the message is. Does it need all this extra? Oh gosh, I just saw this. Did you guys see this? Let's see if I can zoom this in. Oops. Where'd it go? Add to stream. There it is. Did you see this? This is a saw blade. I don't think that's going to work. Even in a running stitch. Maybe. Maybe. Okay, back to me. Um, Keep in mind what the graphic is going to be applied to. Make sure if you have if you have 100,000 stitch count design file that's only in a 4x4 space, it might be too heavy for whatever fabric you're working with. Um, are there any questions? Any questions? And thoughts for next week? Is there anything special you want to cover next week? Do we want to do another business? Been doing a lot of reading lately, got a lot of good information out there, marketing, business. Um, do we want to do more digitizing? Do we want to actually do live digitizing? Do we want to talk about the machines? Remember, coffee and conversation. We're going to talk about what it is you want to know and what you want to understand And I will do my best to research it and provide you that information. Okay. I tell you what, if you have any thoughts, just pop them off in the comments. You know I'll be right there. I'll take a look and we'll go with it. We'll run with whatever it was that you put out there. In the meantime, I think I need to go take a nap. Sorry, just feeling a little under the weather. Okay, what do we got here? We're going to say, where to go? Where to go? There it is. We're going to say bye now.
Wasn't that fun? Do you have more questions? Do you want to learn something new? Join me at quicktostitch.com for coffee and conversation, and we'll talk about it. Embroidery machines, designs, and business. Hope to see you soon. Bye now.